welcome back to the Polldale Podcast. If you've listened to the first few episodes, you've heard all about our breeding philosophy, the history of Poldale, and the cattle that carry our prefix. But today we're stepping away from the pedigree and the performance figures to introduce you to the family behind the operation. Every bull has a pedigree, but every sale has a handshake, a conversation, and a relationship behind it. That's what today's episode is all about. Behind every Poldale animal is a family member that cares deeply about the cattle we're breeding, the people we're working with, and the legacy we're building together for the next generation. Whether you've been buying Poldale genetics for decades, purchased your first bull this year or last year, or simply getting to know us, we hope this episode gives you better understanding of the people behind the prefix. Poldale isn't just a stud, it's our home. It's where our family lives, works, raises our children, celebrates the wins, big and small, learning from setbacks and continuing building our generation of breeding decisions. I'm Katja Williams, and alongside Ned, we're going to be talking about our family. Ned, welcome back for another episode of the Polldale Shorthorns podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be back again. It's something I'm really enjoying. Thanks for having me.
Ned, let's start by talking about what a day looks like on farm. We know that no day is ever the same, and sometimes the day never ends up being, the jobs that are on the list and what we have planned. But let's give everyone a little bit of a look into the enterprise and how we operate on a day-to-day level.
Well, first things first, wake up, and normally you wake up after a restless night with young kids. That's where it normally starts. But yeah, we wake up and obviously do the family thing and check on one another, and if someone's been up all night, we help there and all that sort of stuff. With that aside, generally what happens in the morning is we meet with mum and dad and myself, and we just go over the daily jobs that we need to do. We have a toolbox meeting, you can probably call it. And then from there we separate, and Mum, Liz, she really loves doing the bull feed run, and I've always joked that she'll keep doing that, and if she stops doing that, it will be a very, very sad day for the bulls. They'll all go off their feed. But it's definitely a job she loves doing, and it means the world to her. She's very good at it, and she puts a lot of time, a lot of effort into that side of the operation. So she takes care of all the bull husbandry, the junior bulls coming up for shows, the junior sale bulls for that year, the senior sale bulls, as well as the old sires that we have that in a paddock off season, as well as some backup bulls that we have separate as well if we run into problems like that way. We've got some bulls to call on. So Mum generally takes care of that. Dad really, really enjoys going around. I'm the grunt, I'm the worker, which is good. It suits me down to the ground. I love it. And Dad normally jumps in the tractor and starts feeding out a few things and doing some work on the farm, whether that's some earth work, whether that's feeding out hay, whether it's moving feeders out of mud, to look after animal health, particularly animal foot health and those sorts of things. And then there's always something to do with the stud. There's always scanning, weighing, record keeping, calving, pre-calving, water checks, all those sorts of things. And that's just the stud side. We also run irrigation, as you know, which takes up a fair chunk of the year. Pasture improving, we do our general cropping and hay making. And every 24 to 32 days in summer we're cutting hay. We're doing all nights there for generally 2 nights in a row, and get to sleep until about 10 o'clock and keep going again. So I got a bit on, which is great, and that also doesn't include our other properties to out west, where we spend a lot of time out there. We have set them up very, very well. That works well for us, allowing us to spend the majority of our time and our work here. But again, we like to get around those properties at least twice a week or 3 times a week, depending on the weather. And in winter, we can really back off and let them check them every 6 to 8 days, which has been quite cool. We've had good results working, things like that.
So my role on the farm is one that's very diverse, and that is because early on my role has changed over the last 12 years and definitely over the last 7. So I used to do a lot more work outdoors in the paddock, down in the yards with everybody else. But since having the 4 kids quite close together and them still being quite young, My role at the moment is that I don't go to those early morning toolbox talks. Ned will head over to that, get what they're up to, for the day or the week, whatever the plan is for any projects coming up, and he'll bring that home to me and we'll create an action list from that. So while they're doing their morning toolbox, Ned and I discussed from very early on in having kids that I would be the primary carer, and that is sort of the foundation of where my role sits at the moment and takes up a lot of time, and that is that I do a majority of things for the kids. So whether that's the school runs, so I do the school run while they're doing their toolbox workshop. When I'm in town, I'm doing parts runs. When we're home, I'm keeping the domestic foundations and the logistics going to be able to make sure that we're setting everyone up for success. So it's the cooking and the meal prep, it's the household work, making sure that everyone is clothed. It's thinking a couple of days in ahead logistically and getting everything set up so that what we need, particularly if we're going away to a show or we're going to a junior hef show or someone's judging, or you've got a marking or something coming up, that you've got everything that you need. I do the school logistics, the school paperwork, some of the finances and bookworking. I do administration support and backgrounding, but where it's logistically needed, and I'm also, doing some of the mustering, doing some of the yard work, doing the drought feed runs, doing water checks, setting everybody up and doing those sometimes external parts that we don't necessarily include in everyday farming life and roles. But if you've been to one of our bull sales or shows, you'll often see that I've got a camera in one hand and a child on the other, and that's because I also run the social media and the website, do the production for the podcast, as well as a lot of other background tasks in media production and outwards facing stuff for the farm as well. So I guess you could say I'm almost the glue that holds everything together, and between the four of us on farm and the roles and the skills that we have, it's exactly why we can run the 3 properties and achieve the success that we have in such an innovative and sustainable way as well.
No, definitely, Carl. Everyone's got their role and everyone's got where they slip into the operation. And that's just the obvious stuff that me, Mum and Dad do. And Mum also has done the role very similar to yours and what you do as well for a number of years. And she's really stepping back from that because obviously my two other brothers, they've left the farm with their own careers, which is fantastic to be able to do so. And I've obviously chosen to stay here, which is great. And they're just the obvious roles, the obvious jobs, and generally it's left to the ladies to do a lot of the unsung work, and they're in a lot of ways just as important and more important than what happens out of the paddock too, because without that support it's very easy to run out of steam, and you really, really, really have to acknowledge that as well.
I guess, Ned, that then leads me into the next sort of question, which is how different generations see the stud and where it's heading. In episode 1, we spoke about the Williams line and the history of Bidar all the way through to Dar and Kim and Liz, and now we're talking about, in this episode we're going to be focused mostly on yourself and me coming through in the next generation, and then our kids. So we did have a few questions come through after our first episode, which was, how does this new generation see the stud? The differences that have happened here. I've been back on farm over 12 years. You've been back on farm since school, nearly 17 now. So even in those years, the stud has really changed. So the difference in that period, and then where do we think it might be heading in the future?
Yeah, look, it's a great point, because Mum and Dad, Kim and Liz, they have a very unique perspective in the fact that they've built the operation, and not just built it, but made it viable and made it profitable and made a family base around it. And so their perspective is not only unique, it's very, very one of ownership and one of pride, which I think is very important to remember in a lot of farming family operations. My perspective is unique as well because being born into this as well as living it day in, day out. Some days you see it as work and you're flat out. Other days it's easy to remember or leave your passion at the door and treat it like a job. And other days it's really good to remember why you're doing this and why you're enjoying it and why you're there. And we see a lot of the generational work that's been put in. We see that in our cows and our females. We see that in our infrastructure. We see that in the property, in the country, in the land, how it's been improved. And we see that in the opportunities because I really think if you don't put the work in, you make your own luck in a lot of ways. And it's really, my perspective is very unique and through upbringing and everything else, and because you're benefiting from the work that's been done before you, like 99% of people are, it's a very easy thing to take things for granted. So it's a good idea to take a step back sometimes and appreciate where you're at and how much work's been put in for you to get there, and really concentrate on what you can add to it, how you can make it better, and how you have to adapt to different markets, different trends, different things that have changed. Because the beef industry has changed, particularly since globalization. It's a lot more influenced now through the American market and other factors, other decisions overseas, and the government doesn't really protect you a lot from it because they benefit a lot from it, really. And you see that through live export and the decisions to the sheep industry. So it's really, really important to just remember that if you do your best job here and it allows you to deliver the best thing to market, your best product to market, then that allows you to continue and survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Some big changes that have come through in that time period that we're talking about. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen come through the farm is definitely the infrastructure. We're always looking at investing in infrastructure. I know there's a lot of talk about tech and technology and how that can be helpful, but I also see that if you get the basics right on farm and you get your infrastructure in place, I feel like everything else can come after that. So making sure that the fences are all kept up to date. The bull sale complex has gone in since we've been married and we've started the on-property bull sales. So originally, when I first started coming around to the farm, I guess, and we were dating, Ned, we used to feed bulls in pens of 2, and they used to have, smaller paddock sizes, and now we're doing bulls up to 20 in a paddock and still feeding them out and having great success with them, still with their temperament and having no trouble in those bigger herd sizes, and just changing the way that we're feeding from, the single buckets, more the show feeding type route into, the larger feed troughs.
Yeah, no, we've definitely adapted. And the main reason for that is we've listened to our clients a lot. They want functional cattle that will not only breed on, but they function when they leave your front gate or they leave the on-property sale, they leave the multi-vendor sales. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with having your bulls, your match fit, used to being around other bulls, able to handle themselves. They're not pampered, they're able to run, they're able to move properly. And it's also a lot easier to judge your cattle too if you got big mobs. So as you said, 25, we've just gone up again into mobs of 30, and we wouldn't want to go much more at this stage due to paddock size and limitations. But having cattle in those mobs and just giving them a base ration, with most of our feed coming from roughage and things of that, like hay and haylage, it really allows you to see how your animals perform, because you can control that environment and you control your genotype. It really shows you their full potential. Whereas if they come from different environments, feed bucket's bigger than the other. For just a rough example, it's hard to tell. And you see that a little bit in multi-vendor sales. You see bulls and cattle come in from different feeding programs, different breeding programs, and that's why it's always a really good idea to have a line of cattle, because in a line you have variations. And in those variations, you're able to see whether the animals stay true to type. At the end of the day, if you stay true to type, it makes it easy to breed from your perspective because you're starting with a single place to start with, roughly. You're not starting from multiple spots, and you're not having to, use a shotgun at a target. You're able to actually aim for goals and work towards them. And once you do that, you're able to achieve your market specs and things for whether it's, to achieve high marbling, better structure and softness in your cattle, just those big three things. And if you have animals that have that and don't have that, or vary in that, and they vary in type, then it's a lot harder to chase that goal. And that's why we've streamlined a lot of our processes. So it's easy for us to see that natural variation that happens in cattle, particularly with feeding regimes.
And I think one of the other biggest changes, Ned, is particularly in the last 6 years, is that we've brought our beautiful children into the world. So Edie is currently 6, Mac is 5, Caroline is 3, and Aurora is 1.5. And wow, that has changed the way that we do things as well, and some of the direction that we think the future farm will go in is definitely making sure that the temperament in the cattle and the way we operate is essential to having young kids on farm. So can you tell us a bit more about that, Ned?
Yeah, have kids, everything changes about you. Some people lean a lot into it, some people don't, and that's up to the person. It's definitely been a fun change, definitely exciting change. And you have to adapt. You have to allow for the fact that you not only have to still operate your operation and make good business decisions and make good farm decisions. There's a distinction there. But you also have to be careful how you achieve those goals. And you have to do it in a way that's family friendly, a way that's worker friendly, because, your priorities change. And once your priorities change, you really put some perspective about how you achieve goals. For example, moving cattle, if you got a sturdy old cow in there or a bull that's crook and you're trying to move them, do you really want to have a two-wheeler with kids? So 3 or 4 kids on a two-wheeler moving cattle like that? Or would you rather have something more secure, such as a side-by-side or quad bike where people can fit on? There's a little bit more safety there when operated properly. Or would you rather have 2 people do the job? There's a lot of ways to achieve a goal, and it really comes down to what you're doing that day. But the thing that's really helped me is just to stop, think, and breathe. And that sounds very basic, but it helps you when there's a job there you can see you can do. The pressure's on because you've got a lot more to do that day. 3 things that happen that's unexpected. And the task there's just there. It's easy to do. You can just do it. But you got a kid on each arm, one on your neck, one on your back. You're not as effective. And if you're not as effective, it can be quite dangerous because farming is a dynamic game as well as a dangerous game.
We're very lucky in farming and in many other agriculture areas that we're able to bring the kids down the paddock with us, but it is definitely a big safety mindset to change the setup. So Ned mentioned before the side-by-side. So our side-by-side does have the car seats secured properly in it so that the kids are able to have their 5-point harnesses and they're secure inside the vehicle. So having an additional safety element to everything that we do. And as Ned said, changing the way, like instead of just taking one bike, we now take, a couple of setups depending on, who's with us for the day, because the kids have started school as well. So sometimes we don't always have all of them with us. So changing that setup that is safe for everyone and manages the stock different as well to increase that safety aspect has been really important the last couple of years. Ned, in a previous episode, we spoke about some bloodlines for the cattle, and we mentioned that with our female herd particularly, all the dams have the same name and then they get attributed a number, and that number represents how many registered progeny under that bloodline there is for the females, and we're able to track that lineage all the way back to the stud's foundation. Who were some of the older bloodlines that Kim and Liz brought into the stud?
2 favourite female lines. When I was little growing up, we had a lot of Action Duchesses. We had a lot of Polldale Lovings. And breaking in, and Dad was showing me how to break in heifers. The heifer show, Shorthorn Youth, all breeds, all those shows. They were always either loving or action duchesses, and that's probably why I like them the most. They're always soft, they're always very quiet, they're always deep-bodied, long females, and they really are one of the backbones of the Polldale herd. The reason they are is because when we name those lines, the reason we name them Polldale Loving the 138th and Roni the 42nd and Action Duchess 286th, the reason we do that is so we can keep track of the bloodlines and the females. And we're really happy we have, because I think for the Loving line we're up to 438th. For the older Polldale Action Duchess, they're up to 286th. And the Roni's up to 277. And it's a really good way of keeping track of our females and keeping track of the genetic lines. And the reason it's so important is when Dad was young and him and Da running the stud, our original Polldale herd was beef shorthorn cows. And the beef shorthorns, the reason we brought those females in, like the Loving and Action Duchesses were the first heifers Da and Kim brought from the Reynolds family at Cumnock. There were 5 in total. And they were the first pole shorthorns infused with our beef shorthorns to start breeding pole shorthorns. And they just bred outstanding and bred really well. They really clicked with the genetics that we already had coming from a beef shorthorn commercial line, and we've just kept them going. And that's the reason that their family lines are so big. And the Roni family, it's a different line that was brought in as well. Now, that was originally brought from Lone Pine, from Chaz Hawkins at Jerilderie. And the reason Da and Dad brought the Roni family over, or the females over, to first go over 50 Redesdale beef shorthorn cows, was because they were by a Mandalong Royal Ambassador. Now, that's a very old bloodline, and they really liked the bull, and they thought that'd be something really good to put in our herd. So they're just three of the bloodlines that really mean a lot to me, because I've had a lot to do with them ever since I was really little. And even Eddie, our eldest, when he led a heifer, there's Loving and Action Duchess blood there as well. So it's going on through generation and generation.
I think it's really interesting that you've chosen some of the older lines because of their nostalgia and because of the history that is in them, that they are your favourite breeds. Because I actually went with one of the newer lines, because one of the favourite lines is because when you and I were freshly engaged in 2018, Kim and Liz, as an engagement present, purchased a heifer in calf at an auction in 2018, which was the Southern Cross Trojan Viola line, M1. Mm-hmm. So she came across, and she's had beautiful calves ever since. There's now 13 registered dams in her bloodline for Polldale. We've spoken about the cows being able to get a calf on the ground every year, and that bloodline has definitely proven itself over the last few years, and definitely continuing with that strong bloodline. That Polldale Vandal, who was Pole V 101, selling at the National this year for $12,000, just shows that those bloodlines that we're choosing for the type of cattle that we've spoken about previously is just entering into our herd and the genetics and just doing so well.
Yeah, and that's right. It's not about, staying the course and being fully conservative in where you are. It's about being active in your decision making, in choosing what best suits you at the market. Because there's no use breeding cattle that won't breed on. There's no use breeding cattle that no one will buy. There's no use breeding cattle that won't perform or breed. So you really have to find what works with you, what your current market's like, and what you're aiming for too. And, the Loving, Action Duchess and Roni lines have worked so well for so long for us because they're the type of cattle we like. And new lines like Viola, Polldale Peter, and even Snowdrop, those lines, they're not up and coming. They're starting to establish themselves too because they've got something else to give. And it's not only important that we like to breed a type of animal, you have to have a natural variation, and choosing lines like that, good lines to add to it. You're always looking for cattle that add to your operation, not something that you have to chase and stamp out, and those lines do that, and that's why they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. We had some questions come through over on the socials, as I said, from the first episode we released, and one of them was, what's sale week really like, in the lead up, the excitement, the pressure, and the countless hours that people usually don't see behind the scenes. Would you say that the preparation realistically starts nearly 3 years in advance for sale day?
Yeah, pretty much. Your sale days, you're benefiting from the decisions you made 2.5 years ago, and you made them at the time hoping you got them right, and a lot can change in a market and trends at the time. So again, it comes back to having a natural variation of your type that's applicable to what you're trying to do. So it doesn't matter where really the market ends or where really what you're aiming for. It's about hitting that goal and having marketable, productive cattle. But you're exactly right. The decisions you make now affect your sale day then. And the lead up to sale day is my biggest thing about it's mainly just putting out fires. Like, things go wrong, animals don't go on the way you think that you want them to, or the way you think they will. Other animals that, they're on the bottom cycle of the growth pattern, they're on a bone growth cycle, and they're not putting on fat or muscle when you want them to, and all of a sudden they do. So a lot of that lead up to the sale is a lot of hard work after sale day, a lot of hard work in 2 months leading to your sale day. There's a little bit of downtime in front of your sale where you're able to, catch up with clients and spread word around and talk to people and market. But the lead up to sale day, particularly in the last 6 to 7 days, is more or less just managing what's happening and what's going on, so you can, present a good article to future clients, present a good article to repeat clients, and have them as repeat clients keep coming back. And that's probably the hardest thing, is just navigating all those things, all the things that can go wrong, and just so on sale day and the day before and the day after, you're putting your best foot forward.
Yeah, I would definitely say consistency over the 2.5, 3 years in the lineup to sale day definitely takes away a majority of the stress and a majority of the unpredictability, particularly now. This is our 4th on-property bull sale. Yeah,
4th, 5th, yeah.
So keeping detailed lists, making sure that action items are on the calendar, and you giving yourself space to move if someone does get sick, or if you've got to make a last minute change for something. And there's also a lot of work that goes into the catalogue. So Ned does a lot of the work around the catalogue, and I think that's been one of our biggest learnings, having the on-property bull sale as well, is how much time is actually dedicated to the catalogue. It's a lot of information to collect and collate and get into one spot to get across to the graphic designers, as well as, the videoing, the photographing, to make sure that people know what we've got here on farm, and it's not just us saying how good it is, they can then see how good it is, and changing, updating the website as well, so that people can have access to that as soon as it's available, rather than waiting for a catalogue in the mail or waiting for the open day, which is coming up on the 20...
The open day is coming up on the 13th. But, we try and do as much right as we can. We'll get things wrong. And a lot of people are very quick to point that out, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. We try and present ourselves as best they can and try and make sure all the information that we have is as accurate as we can at the time. And we enjoy working with people to try and help them achieve our goals. And some years people are looking at the cattle that they want, and it's not necessarily the cattle they need, and there may be something there that year that suits them, or there might have been a better bull last year that were brought back in. For example, Poldale Rarity, we sold him to the Armitage family at Geary, and we ended up buying him back to use him, and now he's gone off to another breeding program. And we really like him, he really went on, and we thought a lot of him at the time, but we had other bulls there we had to use, and then an opportunity opened up. So a lot of it's about picking the bull that you think you need. It's not all about the bull you want. And we always try and do the right thing and put our information forward as best we can.
Ned, we've got one last question which has come through on the socials, and that is, which bull exceeded everybody's expectation? And we might end today on that.
Yep. That's a great question. My favourite example's actually Bayview Olympic. When we brought him, he was a bit young. He was very well headed. He had a lot of presence and a lot of constitution. And when he did breed on, he didn't have a lot of meat in his back end, but he bred well. He bred a lot of meat. And what we think happened was that type of bull and his constitution and his makeup really clicked well with our cows. Sometimes you buy a bull you really like, that bull, and it works really well, like you did with Olympic. Other bulls, it doesn't. They don't breed the way you want. And we think he bred above himself with our females, and we brought him in partnership with another stud, and they used him, and they didn't get the results we did, because obviously their female herd's a lot different. So he really bred above himself and beyond for us, and that's why we used a lot of him, and that's why he's a very solid foundation for a lot of our genetics, and we've kept him going forward. That's one good example. Another good example is a bull we brought from Riala, ZZ Top. The first line now he was a young bull when we brought him, very young. So when we put him out with cows, he was right on that edge of is he too young or not, but he performed very well. And the first round of joinings, we weren't all that impressed with his calves. And it wasn't until we changed the type of animal that we're putting him to, and straight away we got great results. And he's got very handy, very, very, very steady, solid sons in last year's sale, and particularly this year's sale too, 26. And he's bred really well. So sometimes you get exactly the right instrument that you want, but you got to use it the right way. And we learnt that lesson with ZZ Top, and we learn it with Olympic. And that's why when I judge and a lot of things like that, we look for things like constitution. Because, people say, well, you can't hit the head. Why do they need a square jaw as long as they can, navigate a feed trough? Well, it's more than that, because when you're buying an animal at the yards, you're buying the meat value. When you're buying a stud animal, you're buying the genetic value and the genetic potential. And so much work that Bidar, Dar, Kim and Liz particularly have put into the stud, you're benefiting from all that while you're keeping the genetics the same, which is another reason why I decided to stay with Poldale and not start our own stud and keep the lines going and keep it all together. So it's a lot easier in the next generation. But those two bulls particularly come to mind when you ask that question, because they bred above themselves. And, we brought really good bulls too that didn't breed on, that we cut a lot of calves just because they look the goods, but their genetics and our genetics didn't mix the way that we liked. And you see that happen all the time. And that comes back to the fact that decisions you make today are 2 years' time's bulls. And
one of my favourite bulls is actually one that we bred, and I can't remember his name, but he was the roan, and we used to call him Fatty, because he used to go over to the hay rack and he used to just eat and eat and eat until he couldn't get his head out of the hay rack anymore. And then we'd have to go down and push him out.
He keto dieted himself till he could unfit. Yeah.
He was one of the quietest, softest bulls. You could just go out and pat him in the paddock, and he had such a character. Very, very funny.
Yeah, he was 26 mil fat, because I reckon he just did that. That was a good year, good hay. That's what we put it down to. Excuse me. But yeah, you get bulls like that. Like I remember Moonby Zorro that we brought years and years ago. He'd pick a straight line.
Yeah.
And if a tree or a feed or a water trough was in that line to his objective, he'd hit it and drag his whole body along it. Then it wasn't until he passed it he'd turn around and bellow at it as if the feed trough had the audacity to get in his way, what he wanted. So there's some funny things like that too with some bulls and cows. Like you get that personality come through, and it's quite interesting.
At the end of the day, bloodlines tell part of the story, but it's the people, the passion, the relationships that make Poldale what it is today. We believe people buy from people they trust, and trust is built on one conversation and one sale at a time, even into the next generations. So whether you're listening from the tractor, the cattle yards, the ute, or the kitchen table, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. Episode 4 is going to be all about Poldale's show history, which has been a episode topic that has been asked for. So we're looking forward to sitting back down and bringing episode 4, Polldale in the show ring, to you guys next week. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Polldale Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and picked up a few tips and information that you might be able to take back into your operation. To learn more about Polldale Shorthorns, head over to the website www.polldalestudshorthorns.com or give us a follow over on the socials. We're on Facebook and Instagram. If you'd like to see the cattle in person, reach out to Ned and have an inspection, or we'll see you on sale day on our on-property bull sale. The sale offers a selection of quality stud shorthorn bulls backed by generations of breeding, fertility, temperament, performance and longevity. For sale date, catalogue, inspection opportunities, please visit us over on the socials or send us an email. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And share with a friend who you think might like to listen to this episode. Until next time, this is Katja and Ned Williams from Polldale Shorthorns signing off. We'll see you on the next one. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you might also enjoy Katja Williams' other podcasts. She has The Ultimate Farm Wife, interviewing female farmers, farm wives, and those who are integrating into or back into family farming businesses. You might also like Absolutely Fabulous with co-host Gillian Fennell, where Katja and Gillian jump into all things agriculture beyond the headlines and closing the urban and rural divide. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share with someone you know will enjoy these podcasts too.